of the defendants indicted in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia were re-indicted for additional offenses allegedly committed while on bail, while other studies would indicate that 7% is the more usual statistic. They also found that over 60% of the persons released on bail on robbery charges were rearrested for offenses while on bail. In bank robbery and armed robbery, the temptation to put the temporary freedom to what the defendant may think is the best advantage by committing other robberies seems especially alluring. A recent study by the Metropolitan Police Department indicates that of 130 defendants initially indicted for armed robbery in the District of Columbia and released pending trial in fiscal 1967, 45 of them, that's 34.6%, were subsequently indicted for another felony while awaiting trial for the original charge. The recent Judicial Council Committee study referred to above shows that of the 557 persons arrested for robbery and released during pending trial during 1968, 70.1% of a sample group of 140 were rearrested for another offense. 43% of those arrested were tried when the study was completed, and 82.1% of these persons were convicted of the crime committed while on pretrial release. 25 bank robberies have occurred in the district during the first 6 months of 1969 as compared to 47 for the comparable period of 68. A trend may be developing since January 69, when 19 robberies occurred, followed by a sharp drop to 2 in February, 1 in March, 2 in April, and none in May, 1 in June. While the picture is not absolutely clear, it appears that the increased efforts of the Metropolitan Police Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, improved bank security arrangements, and judicial tightening of release on bond procedures, plus the imposition of harsher sentences are all contributing to a sharp reduction in bank robberies in the District of Columbia. And that should be reassuring to all of us, because if this trend continues in a very limited situation, it's evidence that more vigorous attention to a particular area of law enforcement actually works. In addition to putting conditions on the release, the proposed amendments further authorize the denial of pretrial release in certain narrowly defined circumstances based on a judicial finding of dangerousness. This authorization to detain certain classifications of persons accused of crime has become the focal point of much heated debate. This was not approved by the American Bar Association Committee. The opponents of pretrial detention argue that bail is a constitutional right afforded by implication through the Eighth Amendment, that pretrial detention violates the accused's right to be presumed innocent, that it is punishment before conviction and amounts to denial of the defendant's right to due process of law because it impairs his ability to prepare for his trial. The Eighth Amendment to the Constitution states only that excessive bail shall not be required. Nowhere does the Constitution grant an explicit right to bail. The right to bail in non-capital cases flows from statute law, enacted at a point in our history when most felonies carried the death penalty. In time, the proposed amendments specify that detention must be separate, if possible, from detention with convicted persons, and release may be obtained to assist in preparation of the defense. Further, there is a precise and stringent limitation of 60 days on any detention. In sum, I submit that the administration's proposals incorporate standards far above the minimum required by the Constitution. In addition to raising the constitutional objections, some persons would urge us to postpone enactment of preventive detention until we have tried other alternatives. It is suggested that better use of bail conditions and adequate supervision of defendants will prevent crime on bail. It is argued that defendants will not commit crime on bail if the court system can process them promptly within 60 days. I, for one, however, must join with those who doubt the efficacy of these alternatives. It is unrealistic to assume that court processes will suddenly become prompt and efficient. It is also unrealistic to imagine that we can adequately superintend crime-prone individuals pending trial when we're even now failing to adequately superintend those who are on parole. Thus, I commend to you both the principle of preventive detention and its particular features as included in the proposed amendment to the Bail Reform Act. The proposal is necessary and constitutional. Further, it raises the level of integrity in our legal system. To be more precise, present practice permits preventing detention in the guise of money bail. The new proposal makes the system more honest. In addition, the proposal at last permits us to detain the wealthy but dangerous defendant. In the past, high bail did not hold defendants from the syndicate or the mafia. Now we can hold the dangerous, be they poor or rich. The proposed amendments to the Bail Reform Act go far to ameliorate some of the demonstrated deficiencies of our bail system. More significantly, it accomplishes our goal of public safety through means that are both constitutional and consistent with existing law and judicial practice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I neglected to mention earlier that among our commentators, we have an added starter who has graciously consented. It's an awfully good
case study for.
Excuse me. I don't know if one of these is a microphone or that one. Mention is an awfully good case study for at least two things, and it's those that I would like to discuss it in the light of this morning. First, the very great difficulty we have with reform of our tragically neglected criminal justice system. And second, the necessity of looking at the whole picture at once and the risk of taking so narrow a slice that we make an error, the dimension of which we cannot measure. The Eighth Amendment had as its purpose prevention too. Prevention of unnecessary detention. And the men who wrote the Bill of Rights were deeply worried about this. They wanted, and they proposed, and the people ratified, an amendment which would have as its major thrust the reduction to the minimum of pretrial detention. Those words, excessive bail shall not be required, resulted over the years in immeasurable injustice. The irony of it is truly remarkable. Money somehow became the standard, and the fact through our history has been that millions, that's the measurement, of people predominantly poor, nearly all poor, have been denied their liberty pending trial for a crime that they have not been convicted of committing because they couldn't raise enough money to get out of jail. 1789, really, the Judiciary Act, and its counterparts in the bail area, until 1966 measures the span during which there was no reform, no change in the system of federal bail. I remember, and I must say it still disturbs me, a decade of practice here in Dallas in which on many, many occasions I ventured down to the county jail or the city jail, often late Saturday night or early Saturday morning, to
to make bail for somebody. I remember particularly one fellow who was a contemporary of my father's and had been a good friend of his for the years that my father lived here. I doubt that the man had ever been out of Dallas County. But from time to time, he drank. And when he did, he thought he was about 10 feet tall. And he would frequently get arrested as a result. And he would be charged on